If you are one of the chosen ones, you should have already noticed that you attract people with deep pains, intense stories, and wounds that few have the patience to listen to. Among them, there is often someone with bipolar disorder. It is no coincidence. There is something in your presence, in your light, that makes these people feel safe to approach. But the mission is not just to welcome. It is to understand and know how to deal. The bipolar person lives in a world of extremes. At times, energy, ideas, and enthusiasm overflow. At other times, they plunge into a sadness so dense that there seems to be no way out. For those who do not understand, this roller coaster may seem like emotional instability, excess, or even lack of character. But the chosen ones know there is much more behind it. They understand that the human spirit is complex, and that the mind also suffers attacks, wear and tear, and imbalances that cannot be seen with the naked eye. What the world calls instability can actually be the reflection of real chemical and biological changes in the brain. It is at this point that the chosen ones need to unite spiritual discernment with practical knowledge. Because helping is not only praying or giving advice, it is also understanding how to support without judging, establish healthy boundaries, and above all, not carrying alone a weight that only God can sustain. In this video, we will talk clearly and honestly about how the chosen ones can deal with a bipolar person without losing their own peace, keeping love steady and compassion active. You will understand what is actually happening in the brain of someone who suffers from this, how to identify triggers, and how to act to be a channel of healing rather than a drain. If this topic makes sense to you, follow the channel right now, because here we discuss realities that few have the courage to expose, but that every chosen one needs to understand to fulfill their calling. Many chosen ones throughout life encounter people who carry deep emotional pains. Among these pains, bipolarity is one of the most challenging. It is not limited to mood changes. We are talking about a real condition with chemical and biological causes in the brain that affects how the person thinks, feels, and reacts. One of the biggest mistakes is to confuse bipolar symptoms with character traits. When a chosen one does not understand the basis of this condition, they may end up interpreting behaviors as ingratitude, coldness, or emotional exaggeration. This leads to frustration, distance, and sometimes the breaking of bonds that could have been preserved. Bipolar disorder causes significant changes in neurotransmitters, which are chemical messengers of the brain. Among them dopamine, glutamate, norepinephrine, and serotonin. These substances regulate mood, energy, and motivation. When imbalanced, behavior changes in a perceptible way. In the manic phase, dopamine and glutamate can be elevated, generating excessive energy, insomnia, and impulsivity. The person talks a lot, plans excessively, spends without thinking, and may engage in risky situations. In the depressive phase, there is a drop in these substances, bringing about low mood, fatigue, and, in more severe cases, destructive thoughts. The chosen one needs to understand that these oscillations are not mere choices. They are part of a chemical cycle that requires care, treatment, and patience. This does not mean tolerating harmful behaviors without limits, but acting with discernment. Loving maturely involves understanding what is a symptom and what is a conscious decision. In spiritual terms, bipolarity can also be a terrain of intense battle. During crises, the person is more vulnerable to emotional and spiritual attacks. This requires the chosen one to adopt a posture of watchfulness, intercession, and at the same time, someone who knows how to protect their own heart to avoid weariness. The mission is not to fix the bipolar person, but to walk alongside them wisely. This involves knowing when to speak and when to simply listen, when to intercede, and when to encourage seeking medical help. The balance between faith and knowledge is essential for support to be real and effective. Chosen ones who have already faced living with bipolar people know that expectations must be adjusted. There will be days of strong connection and others of unexpected distance. This instability can wound those who are not prepared. Therefore, it is essential not to base the relationship solely on momentary responses, but on a conscious commitment to being present. Another crucial point is to understand that bipolarity can be stabilized with appropriate treatment. The chosen one's role is not to replace doctors or therapists, but to reinforce that seeking help does not nullify faith. On the contrary, it is a demonstration of wisdom and care for the temple that is the body. When the chosen one informs themselves about the condition, they notice crisis signals in advance and can intervene in a loving and preventive way. This may mean encouraging the person to rest, avoiding stressful situations, or even praying together, asking God for guidance for that specific moment. The calling of the chosen ones is not only to preach or heal, it is also to understand. Often, the simple act of understanding what is happening is, in itself, a form of healing for those who have felt misunderstood their whole life. And bipolarity is one of the conditions that most generate this feeling. When the bipolar person realizes they are not being judged, but heard and respected, the bond strengthens. This is the fertile ground where transformation can begin. The chosen one, by combining compassion with knowledge, becomes a channel for the person to find emotional and spiritual stability. This understanding is the first key to dealing with bipolarity. Without it, any help becomes superficial. With it, the chosen one can truly be a light in the midst of a scenario that, for many, seems chaotic. The chosen ones carry something that cannot be explained merely by charisma or charm. It is a spiritual presence that conveys safety, warmth, and often hope to those who are emotionally fragile. This energy is intensely perceived by people who face bipolar disorder. Those living with bipolar disorder feel the world in an amplified way. Both joys and pains arrive with greater intensity. This makes them seek, even unconsciously, environments and people who convey balance. The chosen ones, being channels of peace and light, become a natural refuge in these moments of turbulence. During phases of emotional instability, the bipolar person may feel lost, misunderstood, and even rejected by those who do not understand their mood swings. When they encounter a chosen one, they sense something different: the absence of judgment and the ability to see beyond superficial reactions. This stance creates an almost immediate connection. The chosen one's spiritual sensitivity is another factor that draws them in. Even without medical explanations or details, they perceive when something is amiss. They may sense weight in the environment, identify unspoken sadness, and even sense that a crisis is approaching. This makes the bipolar person feel seen in a unique way. This attraction, however, does not happen only in times of difficulty. In the good phases, when the bipolar person is full of energy and ideas, they also approach the chosen ones because they feel there is room there to express creativity and passion for life without being stifled. The chosen one is not only support, they are also encouragement. It's important to remember that this connection is not always smooth. The emotional intensity of a bipolar person can be exhausting for someone who lacks spiritual and emotional preparation. The chosen one needs to learn to maintain healthy boundaries, to avoid overloading themselves and absorbing pains that are not theirs. One of the reasons for this bond is that the bipolar person, even with fluctuations, has great sensitivity to recognize authenticity. They identify when someone is being genuine or simply acting out of obligation. The chosen one's heart, genuine and willing to help, creates a rare and deep trust. In the spiritual world, this attraction can be seen as part of a purpose. God connects those who need healing with those who have been equipped to minister that healing, whether emotional, spiritual, or even physical. But for this mission to be fulfilled, the chosen one needs to be strengthened and aware of the challenges to come. There is something curious about this relationship. Often, the bipolar person approaches the chosen one even before they know their faith or ministry. It is as if the spirit recognizes the presence of something divine and seeks shelter, even without exactly understanding what is happening. This bond transcends logic. Care begins with listening. The chosen one who knows how to listen without rushing already offers half of the healing that the bipolar person seeks. But this listening must be accompanied by discernment, for there are moments when the person is open to advice, and others when they simply need silence and company. It is in this balance between embracing and guiding that the chosen one becomes a true instrument of God. They do not try to save with their own strength, but point to the source that truly restores. This stance prevents frustration and keeps the bond healthy. The attraction between chosen ones and bipolar individuals is not a coincidence. It is a purpose-driven connection. It is as if the Creator placed a beacon in the chosen one's heart and said, "Welcome those who come to you, for they need the light I have placed in your hands." This awareness changes how every meeting is faced. In the end, understanding this dynamic is essential. The chosen one who recognizes why they attract bipolar people stops acting on the fly and begins to handle these connections as part of their mission. This strengthens the relationship and increases the chances that it becomes a channel of real transformation. Dealing with someone who has bipolar disorder is, for the chosen, both a privilege and a great responsibility. This relationship can be profoundly transformative, but it can also bring about situations that test patience, faith, and emotional balance. The first challenge is understanding that mood swings are not simple ups and downs common to others. In bipolar disorder, they can be intense and unpredictable. One day may start with enthusiasm and end with deep gloom, with no visible reason. For the chosen, this requires constant spiritual discernment and sensitivity. Another delicate point is the emotional energy involved. Bipolar people, especially during manic or euphoric phases, can be extremely intense. This intensity can be contagious in a positive way, but it can also lead to exhaustion. The chosen must learn not to absorb this energy in a way that harms themselves. During periods of depression, the bipolar person may isolate themselves, refuse help, or even become irritated when someone tries to get close. For the chosen, this is a test of perseverance. It's necessary to know when to insist and when to give space, understanding that love also expresses itself in respecting the other's boundaries. Spiritually, the challenge is even greater. The chosen must maintain the clarity that they are not the savior of the person. The mission is to point to God, who is the true source of healing and balance. Without this awareness, the chosen runs the risk of becoming overwhelmed and feeling frustrated when they do not see immediate changes. Another obstacle is dealing with words or actions that, in moments of crisis, can be harsh or unfair. The bipolar person, during emotional swings, may say things they later regret. The chosen, to stay firm, must develop a heart ready to forgive and not hold grudges. There is also the risk of spiritual confusion. During moments of euphoria, the bipolar person may engage in activities or ideas that are not aligned with faith, and the chosen may feel the need to correct everything at once. However, it is necessary to act wisely, guiding gradually without imposing excessive weight. Prayer becomes an indispensable ally. The chosen cannot rely solely on human strength to sustain this mission. Daily intercession, asking for discernment and peace, is what maintains emotional balance and a clear vision of the purpose God has placed before them. Another common challenge is the oscillation in the relationship. There are moments when the bipolar person intensely seeks the chosen's presence, and others when they withdraw completely. This can generate insecurity, or even a sense of rejection. Here, the chosen must remember that withdrawal is not always personal, but part of the person's emotional cycle. Communication is also a delicate field. The chosen should learn to use words that convey love and firmness at the same time. Poorly chosen comments can be interpreted negatively, while a patient and respectful tone can open doors to deeper conversations. Amid all these challenges, there is one essential point: taking care of oneself. The chosen must not forget that they also need rest, time with God, and moments of renewal. By caring for their own spiritual and emotional health, they will be better prepared to help the other in a consistent way. Finally, understanding that the relationship with a bipolar person is a fertile field for personal and spiritual growth changes everything. Each challenge faced can strengthen patience, increase the ability to love without expecting immediate return, and broaden the sensitivity to deal with other people who also carry invisible wounds. When the chosen sees this relationship as part of their calling, they stop fighting against the instability and begin walking alongside, helping the bipolar person to gradually find paths to balance. And in this process, both are transformed. When a bipolar crisis manifests, whether in the manic phase or in the depressive phase, the chosen one needs to act with calm, wisdom, and spiritual firmness. It is not the moment to argue or impose abrupt changes, but to create a safe and stable environment. The first step is to maintain serenity. The bipolar person may be agitated, speak quickly, or act impulsively, and if the chosen one enters the same pace, the conflict will only escalate. Speaking slowly, maintaining a calm tone of voice, and conveying confidence helps to slow down the energy of the moment. During periods of euphoria, establishing clear boundaries is fundamental. The chosen one should, with love, guide to avoid hasty decisions, excessive spending, or risky behaviors. It is not about control, but about protection, showing that there are consequences for every choice. In the depressive phase, the care changes. Here, silent presence can be more powerful than many words. Being available, listening without judgment, and offering practical support, such as helping with simple tasks, already makes a difference. Small gestures show that the person is not alone. Prayer is also essential in these moments. The chosen one can intercede discreetly, asking God for direction about what to say or do. Sometimes spiritual intervention occurs invisibly, bringing peace where there was confusion. Another important point is to avoid unnecessary confrontations. In the midst of a crisis, the bipolar person may interpret words in a distorted way. It is better to choose battles, leaving certain conversations for moments of greater emotional stability. Maintaining a structured routine also helps. Encouraging regular sleep times, meals, and activities reduces instability. The chosen one can, in a subtle way, help the person follow this organization, reminding that discipline brings balance. Finally, taking care of oneself is indispensable. The chosen one who exhausts themselves completely will not have the strength to help. Setting aside moments of rest, seeking spiritual support, and talking with trusted people maintain emotional health to continue being support. By acting this way, the chosen one not only faces crises with wisdom, but becomes a channel of balance and hope, helping the bipolar person endure difficult moments with dignity and safety. For the chosen one, dealing with a bipolar person is not only an emotional or practical challenge, it is also a spiritual mission. He is called to be a light amid mood swings and to carry the presence of God, who brings stability when everything seems unstable. The first aspect is discerning when to act and when to simply pray. Not every moment calls for words. Sometimes God guides the chosen one to remain silent, interceding in the spirit and allowing his peace to envelop the environment. This quiets the atmosphere and opens doors for communication. Another responsibility is to maintain a healthy spiritual atmosphere. This means avoiding loaded arguments, removing words of condemnation, and cultivating conversations that bring hope. The bipolar person can feel energies around them intensely, and a spiritually light environment directly influences their well-being. In addition, the chosen one must recognize spiritual attacks that can intensify symptoms. The disorder has biological and psychological bases, but this does not prevent spiritual forces from taking advantage of moments of fragility. Discerning these attacks and fighting them in prayer is part of the care. Bible study together can be transformative. Choosing passages that speak of hope, peace, and purpose helps the bipolar person renew their mind and find security in something immutable. Small studies or shared devotionals strengthen faith and tighten bonds. Another important point is not to carry this mission alone. The chosen one should seek support from other intercessors and spiritual leaders. Sharing the burden with trusted people expands spiritual coverage and prevents emotional burnout. Finally, it is essential to remember that the journey is long. It is not about solving everything in one day, but about walking together with love and consistency. The chosen one who remains steadfast, even in the face of relapses or repeated crises, becomes a living testimony of God's care. Thus, the spiritual role of the chosen one goes far beyond just dealing with bipolar people. It is about carrying the light of the kingdom, interceding with faith, and creating an environment where emotional and spiritual healing can flourish. The chosen one who lives with or accompanies someone with bipolar disorder needs to understand that taking care of oneself is not selfish, but part of the mission. An intercessor spiritually and emotionally exhausted will have more difficulty helping. Therefore, the first step is to recognize one's own limits and know when to step back to renew oneself. Personal prayer is indispensable, not only interceding for the bipolar person, but also asking for strength, discernment, and balance for oneself. Talking to God about one's own struggles allows the chosen one to unload weights that cannot be carried alone. Establishing moments of rest is another crucial point. It is common for someone who helps to want to be always available, but this can lead to exhaustion. Rest is not abandonment. It is preparation to continue helping with quality and love. Coexisting with or walking beside a person with bipolar disorder is a mission that requires sensitivity, patience, and discernment. For the chosen ones, this task is not just a matter of empathy or human support. It is part of a spiritual calling. God places certain lives in His path to be channels of love, light, and restoration amid emotional storms. Understanding bipolarity goes beyond knowing how to identify manic or depressive crises. It is about recognizing that there is a real neurochemical context, which is not whimsy or a lack of faith. Science already shows that there are changes in the brain, the immune system, and the biological rhythm of these people. Recognizing this helps the chosen one act with compassion and without hasty judgment. In daily life, it is essential that the chosen one remains attentive to changes in the bipolar person's behavior, but without taking on the guilt of not being able to solve everything. There are moments when the best way to help is to encourage seeking medical treatment, keep routines organized, and support in small victories. The power of prayer remains the foundation. Praying not only for healing but also for balance, stability, and wisdom to deal with each phase. Interceding for mental and emotional protection while staying at peace is an act of faith and obedience to the purpose. It is also important that the chosen one knows how to set healthy boundaries. Love does not mean allowing their energy and health to be drained to exhaustion. By taking care of themselves, the chosen one preserves the ability to continue helping in the long term. An intercessor who is exhausted becomes vulnerable and less effective in their mission. Another essential point is the stance in the face of difficult moments. In crises, the bipolar person may say harsh things or withdraw. The chosen one needs to understand that often it is not personal. In these moments, staying calm and avoiding impulsive reactions is part of the wisdom needed to sustain the relationship. God does not hand out impossible missions. If you, as a chosen one, perceive that you attract people with bipolarity, it is because you carry within you something that can be healing and a refuge for them. It is not about being perfect or having all the answers, but about being constant, firm, and available in love. This is a long-term journey, but one rich with fruit. Small changes, the right words at the right time, and silent gestures of support can make more difference than long sermons. Being a presence of God in someone's life is often more powerful than any advice. Now, I want to know from you. Have you dealt with or are you dealing with someone bipolar? How was or is this experience? Write in the comments, share your testimony, and if possible, tell how God guided you in this process. Your story can strengthen other chosen ones who are going through the same mission. If this message spoke to your heart, follow the channel to receive more content that strengthens your faith and helps you fulfill the call with wisdom and courage. The chosen ones do not walk alone. They support each other, grow stronger together, and stay steadfast to the end.